On Tuesday, we practiced and reviewed actually some of our rules for using commas. We had spent all of last week talking about punctuating dialogue, so that was one of the rules for using a comma after your speaker or after your dialogue. To separate your speaker from his or her direct words, you have to separate it with a comma. Another rule to use commas is to separate the day and the year in a date, to separate the city and the state. Students should already know some of this. I mean, this is part of writing an envelope and an address. After the greeting in a letter. I did point out to students that one of the most common errors that I see in a letter, though, is putting the comma after the dear. The greeting is not complete until you've announced the name of the person who you're actually greeting. Dear Mrs. Culleton, comma, or Dear Grandma, or Dear Aunt Susie. Same with the closing. Your friend, sincerely, love, always needs a comma. And then what we're really going to spend most of our time this year talking about are introductory words or phrases. And I tried to explain to students that an introductory word or phrase doesn't have to be there. If we took that word out, the sentence would read, "We will learn about commas." And that sentence makes complete sense. We can add more description by putting a word at the beginning to introduce it, in this case, an adverb, or in the next sentence, a prepositional phrase in your homework. But if we take that prepositional phrase out, the sentence would read, "Use commas correctly," which grammatically is a correct sentence. But when we add a prepositional phrase or an adverb or a dependent clause at the beginning of a sentence to introduce it, we need to make sure that we set it off with a comma. So to practice this, we gave students a letter, and we practiced coming to the board and putting in commas where they needed to be. And this is exactly how students need to be doing their homework tonight. So for example, we would need a comma here, and then students had to state the rule. So it was to separate the city and state. Another place we need a comma would be here, and that's for a greeting. Oops, I spelled it wrong. My apologies. Another place that we might need a comma would be after this introductory word. Now students on their homework will have a little bit more room to actually do their explanations. Another one here for the closing. Here for a date. And so students would go through this and practice adding commas and stating the rule for why those commas needed to be there. And obviously I didn't find all the commas here. It was just an example to show students what they needed to do for their homework. The homework will not be counted as complete if there's no explanation of why the comma needs to be there, if the rule is not stated. So this is kind of a little review of what we did in class on Tuesday, in case any questions come up with how to do the homework for Tuesday night, which actually ends up being due on Thursday because we went to the computer lab on Wednesday.